One train ride. One stranger. One unbelievable second chance. I'm David, 43, a nurse with a deep-seated love for science and a quiet determination to help others. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was comforting. Long shifts in a community hospital, evening walks with my dog Baxter, and curling up with a good medical mystery or biology text after dinner. I had purpose, stability, and I believed I knew what love meant. That all shifted on March 5, 2020, the day I met Amanda. We were both attending a regional healthcare conference in Seattle when our paths crossed near the coffee table. I'd stayed late, presenting a poster on patient care in emergency rooms, how empathy could heal faster than any antibiotic. After my explanation, she approached with thoughtful questions. Her curiosity set me at ease. We ended up grabbing coffee, and what should have been a brief conversation extended for hours. We talked about nursing, neuroscience, indie music, and the ache and optimism of new starts. She was warm, smart, and careful with her words, the kind of person who carried heartbreak gently, like she was cradling something fragile. My heart recognized that tenderness. That night, I found myself walking home on cloud-soft asphalt, replaying her laughter and thinking, I want to know her. Amanda was recently divorced, and she didn't mention much about that life. But there was a depth in her eyes, a quiet resilience that I had to learn more about. She spoke of Baxter, the rescue dog who slept at the foot of her bed, of hikes in the foothills, and her love for old classic films. I realized I was falling for all of her story. But her story included a daughter, Chloe, then 16. I met her a few days later at Amanda's apartment. She was in her room, headphones on, drawing with intense focus. I paused at the doorway, uncertain whether to interrupt. She looked up, eyes guarded, and offered a brief, polite nod. Not warm, but not cold, something in between. I replied with a soft hi, Chloe, then closed the door gently. The distance between us was more than a room, it felt like a cavern. Over the next few weeks, I made tentative attempts to bridge that gap. I helped Amanda prepare dinner and offered Chloe a science book I thought she might like. She glanced at it, marine biology, none too mirthful, flipped a few pages, then set it aside. I respected the boundary. Still, I believed that slow kindness was better than forced attention. One afternoon, Amanda and I took Baxter for a walk in a local park. Chloe tagged along, unexpectedly. She was quiet but present. I told her a goofy chemistry story about mixing paint with household vinegar and food coloring. She cracked a small smile. My heart caught, a simple, unguarded smile. I filed it away as a small victory. Maybe, I thought, there's hope. As our relationship progressed, Amanda and I fell into routines bookended by laughter and companionship. We cooked together, made playlists, and sat on her balcony watching the city lights while we talked about shared dreams, a home with a small garden, maybe travel after the pandemic passed. I talked about the possibility of adopting Baxter officially. She teased me, saying, one day, this whole thing will feel like our ordinary. One evening in June, I shared with Amanda that I was thinking of enrolling in night classes for advanced nursing. She reached across the dinner table, grasping my hand, and said, "You are brilliant at what you do. You deserve more." I felt seen, something I hadn't after the breakup with Sam. As I looked at Amanda's hopeful face, I felt the quiet foundation of something deep, something lasting. And so I believed, naively, perhaps, that everything was just beginning. That this small family of 3 could slowly become something complete. Little did I know, behind Chloe's polite nods and guarded smiles, tension was brewing. A darkness I couldn't see, couldn't imagine, and a moment was coming that would crack this picture-perfect world wide open. It was Tuesday, August 9, 2024, and I had woken with the usual bleary-eyed dread. I was supposed to deliver some lab results to Amanda's mother, just a quick drop-off after my morning shift. I pulled on faded jeans, a clean but ordinary t-shirt, and drove the hospital's back parking lot before boarding the train for what should have been a routine errand. I stepped off at the station near her neighborhood, breathing in the summer air thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and car exhaust. I walked up to the house, doors locked, curtains drawn, but the front porch light was still on. That, plus the slight creak when I stepped inside, should have been my first alarm bell. Amanda's mother, Mama Jo, and her own mother, Grandma Beth, sat on the living room couch. Their faces were drawn, as if they'd aged overnight. I smiled weakly. "Good morning," I began. "I brought the MRI results we talked about." Jo held my gaze, but Beth shook her head. "It's not about those," Jo said quietly. Then came the words that shattered me. "Chloe said you touched her while she was sleeping." I froze. My brain imploded. She said what? My voice cracked. They both burst into tears. Joe placed a shaky hand on my arm. She told me last night. She's convinced. Convicted. Those words echoed as I backed toward the door, but before I could escape, I heard a siren. Within minutes, 2 police officers were at the door. They asked a few quick questions, didn't let me explain, and cuffed me swiftly. I tried to tell them there must be some mistake. My words sounded hollow even to me. I was escorted from the living room, past silent neighbors peering through curtains, and onto the street. All I felt was disbelief. The station smelled like bleach and coffee. I sat under flickering fluorescent lights, handcuffed, waiting to be processed. My mind raced. This has to be a misunderstanding, I repeated, but the words grew faint, powerless. After scans, forms, and a bye-bye to the concept of normal life, they charged me, attempted sexual assault of a minor. I was released on bail, $200,000. I didn't have that. After lying awake for hours, I called Amanda. She didn't pick up. She still hasn't. Within 24 hours, my nurse's license was suspended, with no evidence or investigation needed, just a procedural blanket. The hospital suspended me, citing reputational risk. Amanda texted, "We need distance." That was it. Friends messaged apologetically, I believe her. I lost half my contacts overnight. Social media erupted, one hateful damn read, "Kill yourself." My inbox trembled with anger. I packed what I could, documents, files, a few shirts, and moved to a bare studio apartment 3 hours away. No bed, no couch, just a mattress and a microwave. Every inch of the place was silence and dread. The next days passed in a fog. I couldn't sleep. Bile rose in my throat every morning. The world tasted stale and bitter. My reflection in the bathroom mirror, eyes hollow, jaw slack, was harder to bear than any accusation. I found myself pacing at 3 a.m., reading about false memory, child suggestibility, and forensic psychology. I scrawled letters to Amanda, never sent, about my love, my pain, my innocence. Sometimes I'd burn them just so I couldn't second-guess not sending. With the help of my lawyer. We requested expert witnesses on memory suggestibility. We asked for video footage or alibis from the night of the alleged incident. I filmed volunteer sessions, compiled patient testimonials, and got character letters from colleagues. We scheduled a polygraph, though it's not foolproof, hoping for proof of honesty. But every piece felt like carrying water in a sieve. No matter what, there was no physical evidence ever placed in my hands. Just her voice, and that sealed a verdict in many eyes. I kept going to therapy, but the sessions were dark pit stops in a spiral. I kept quiet about suicidal thoughts. Therapists told me it could be used against me. So I screamed internally. I lost appetite, lost focus. My trailer of comforts reduced to cold sweat, late night pacing, and notebook pages drenched in my own desperation. I didn't know how to fix this. Every day, I counted down to Wednesday at 9 a.m., the sentencing date. It felt unreal, like a movie script, not real life. If convicted, the sentence could be 9 years in maximum security prison, 3 hours away. No parole, no mercy. I knew my lawyers would argue. Chloe's testimony could be flawed due to memory suggestibility. Lack of physical proof, no forensic evidence. Strong character testimonials showing care, compassion, and integrity. Expert testimony on how child recollections can be unreliable. But would the judge care? Would it matter? 2 nights before sentencing, I slept nothing. In one moment of raw terror, I thought, maybe this is the end of me. But that's when I typed out this story. That's when I realized, if no one hears it, it never happened. So here I am, writing in the dark of my sleepless apartment, hoping my words carry weight where facts could not. The morning of Wednesday, September 3, 2024, felt like walking into a furnace. I stepped into the courthouse lobby, my palms sweating, breath shallow. Today, at 9 a.m., I'd stand before a judge facing what felt like the final turn of my life's twist, sentencing for a crime I didn't commit. The courtroom smelled of polished wood, paper, and whispered tension. I took my seat at the defense table, lawyer to my left, stacks of documents arranged neatly. Official observers and a few reporters filled the benches. I spotted Chloe, flanked by her grandparents, her posture stiff and composed. I exhaled a small, shaky breath, and tried to focus on my lawyer's whispered advice. The defense's first witness, Dr. Elaine Morris, a renowned forensic psychologist. She stood confidently, voice calm as she explained how memory is not like a videotape, it's reconstructive, malleable, and highly influenced by suggestion. She described studies showing how even a single misleading question can cause memory distortion, especially in children. She referenced cases with dozens of children falsely accusing adults, later attributed to coercive, suggestive interrogation. She explained how traumatic or repeated questioning can cause vivid, but false, memories. She cited landmark cases like the McMartin preschool trial, where improper interviewing tactics led to dozens of false allegations. Each fact weighed on the courtroom air. Chloe's sincerity didn't guarantee accuracy. The method and context of gathering her statement could have tainted it irreparably. The prosecution attorney rose, poised and stern. "Dr. Morris, are you saying even truthful children can lie? Unintentionally?" "Yes," Dr. Morris replied. "Children want to please adults. Unsupported suggestions or repeated prompts can implant detailed false memories." The prosecutor pressed her on whether Chloe, at age 16, could still be influenced. Dr. Morris nodded. "Definitely. Development doesn't give immunity, contexts and pressure do." She referenced authoritative experiments. The courtroom remained tense, opinion now torn between emotional testimony and scientific scrutiny. Next, former colleagues, patients, and friends testified on my behalf. One elderly patient described how I cared for her after a fall, describing me as gentle and reliable. My best friend spoke of my volunteer work, teaching chemistry to neighborhood kids on weekends. A coworker said I'd risk my shifts to help overwhelmed staff. Each testimony constructed a picture of someone fundamentally caring, not a predator. The prosecutor closed on emotion, not evidence. "Chloe is telling the truth. She speaks with pain, clarity, and conviction. We must protect children like her. Physical proof isn't necessary, her trauma alone matters." Her words brought tears from Chloe's grandmother. My heart sank. Emotion weighs heavily in courtrooms. My attorney stood, voice steady. "Your Honor, this is not about doubting Chloe. Rather, we ask, which narrative is more certain? A child's single testimony, or decades of scientific consensus showing memory is fragile?" He summarized the forensic case. Memory inaccuracies, even in sincere witnesses. Questionable interview methods, no recordings exist. Strong character evidence, showing decades of altruism. No physical evidence tying me to any wrongdoing. He urged the judge to weigh science over fear, and innocence over assumption. The judge exited for deliberation. Atmosphere froze. Chloe's voice was gone, only the mechanical sound of files rustling remained. My legs quivered, my mind raced with what-ifs. I caught her gaze, fragile, conflicted. I wanted to reach out, to say, "I never hurt you." But the truth felt distant, drowned in the weight of this room. Minutes crawled into an hour. Courthouse footsteps echoed. I held my breath. Emotion against evidence, memories against science, hearts against facts. This was more than a trial. It was a test of whether knowledge, reason, and empathy could still shape justice, or whether a single testimony can eclipse everything. Will scientific understanding of memory displace emotional narrative? Will the judge find reasonable doubt, or convict based on heartfelt testimony? Regardless, injustice may already have ravaged my life. That's where this chapter pauses, on the edge of judgment and the precipice of possibility. Nearly 2 hours after leaving the courtroom, the judge re-entered. My stomach lurched. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears. Chloe sat beside her grandparents, face solemn. My lawyer gave a final squeeze of my hand, his eyes full of urgent hope. I swallowed hard and focused on the judge's robes as she cleared her throat. "In regard to the charge of attempted sexual assault of a minor," she began. My heart seized. Then, the court finds no physical evidence. The testimony of the minor is sincere, yet the defense has clearly demonstrated substantial scientific concerns about memory reliability, particularly under suggestive questioning. The words felt slow, deliberate. She paused. Therefore, the court finds insufficient evidence to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. A wave of disbelief washed over me. I slumped back, tears burning. Innocence, at last. The judge continued. All charges are hereby dismissed. My name remains legally clear. No record of conviction will appear. The court strongly recommends therapy for the minor to explore the context of her memory. And, most meaningfully, a formal warning was issued to recommend reforms on how child interviews are conducted to avoid unintentional memory contamination. That last point, a judicial request for structural change, felt like more than personal vindication. It felt like a statement: science had spoken, and justice had listened. I left the courthouse almost unrecognizable to myself. Anxiety still gripped my chest. Trauma doesn't vanish with a court order. But there was space for the first time to breathe. Amanda didn't call. The hospital had reinstated my license 3 weeks earlier, pending an internal review. I walked back through the old halls, seeing rooms filled with patients who needed reassurance. That felt like home again. I returned to therapy, cautious and scarred. The darkness still hovered, but I walked through it with a purpose, to become someone who helps others, even when nothing helps him. Throughout this trial, experts like Elizabeth Loftus and Julia Shaw testified that memories, even sincere ones, can be false when influenced by suggestion. Courts across the nation have recognized this, even instructing juries that eyewitness testimony may be unreliable. Notable cases: the McMartin preschool scandal, the Ramona false memory suit, highlighted how investigation bias and repeated, suggestive questioning produced false allegations with real-world consequences. My experience shows that even a single statement, if left unexamined, can devastate a life. I didn't become the hero of a love story. Amanda didn't return. But I rediscovered everything else. I requalified as a nurse and returned to work in a community setting. My license restored, I began mentoring younger staff and volunteering at memory awareness workshops. I shared my story to raise awareness of how justice systems can better protect the accused and the vulnerable. Surprisingly, Chloe and I never spoke after the trial. I understand. Trauma is complicated. Instead, through court-mandated therapy, I hoped she would one day look back with clarity too. Memory is not fact, even when felt with pain. Science can help the scales of justice balance emotion with evidence. Second chances can come through struggle, not perfection, mine through a judge's careful weighing of testimony and psychology. I'm 43, a nurse survivor of accusation, debt, and deep despair. And here I stand, not forgiven, but cleared. Damaged, but rebuilt. Broken, but breathing. I'm haunted by what happened. But I'm grateful for one profound truth: the system can work, if science guides empathy and if doubt is honored. I write this not as a declaration of triumph but as a beacon. For the wrongly accused. For the fractured systems. For anyone who wonders if they'll ever breathe again. Yes, you can. Yes, the world may come soft again in corners. You, too, might be redeemed not by love, or by strangers, but by the power of reason, fairness, and a second chance. Days after the courtroom drama, I stepped outside into a world that no longer looked like it belonged to a stranger. The headlines were gone, the whispers ended, except inside my mind. I still flinch at passing ambulances. I still avoid crowds, fearing stares. But there was something else now, space to breathe. I moved back in with Amanda's mom temporarily. It was a gesture of generosity more than reconciliation. The hospital reinstated me, I cleaned the badge they handed back, felt the weight of its return. It pulsed with both opportunity and caution, a reminder of what was nearly taken. In court, the judge urged reforms in how we interview children. She wasn't just freeing me, she was asking society to wake up. Her words echoed in my volunteer work ahead. Workshops for nurses on how to gently and appropriately discuss allegations. Support groups for the accused to share experiences without stigma. Public talks in libraries and community centers focused on memory science. I didn't reread every comment about me. But I reached out to a few old friends who stayed. Together, we talked through the darkest moments. I began dating again, carefully, with kindness and boundaries. I refused to chase Amanda or Chloe. Instead, I asked, can I rebuild with honesty or rebuild something new? I keep an annual ritual, no, not rewatching my trial tape. On September 3rd, I light a candle for survival, a quiet commitment. I'm alive because evidence outweighed emotion. I could breathe again because someone cared to look deeper. Science is humanity's flashlight, not its judge. Obviously, not everyone will face a nightmare like mine. But what if you or someone you love did? Learn how memory works, so you can ask better questions. Approach testimony with care, not assumptions. Support honest investigation, not fear-based judgments. Care for both the vulnerable and those accused, both deserve dignity. The system isn't perfect, but it can work when we champion both empathy and evidence. I didn't get the love story ending. But I gained something else, a voice. A mission. I'm a nurse who knows trauma firsthand. I teach about justice founded in science. I mentor those rebuilding after accusation. No longer the same man, but a man of purpose. Maybe the greatest second chance isn't a clean slate, It's the mistakes we outgrow and the deeper truths we choose to face. Memory is unreliable. Justice is imperfect. But hope survives in the fragments we finish. In the weeks after the verdict, stepping out of the courthouse felt surreal, as if my old life was waiting in the wings, ready to resume. But trauma doesn't fade that easily. I still flinch at the sound of sirens and startle at unexpected knocks. Crowded places make my heart race. But for the first time, I could breathe again. I moved back in temporarily with Amanda's mom, more for practical comfort than hope. Meanwhile, the hospital reinstated my nursing license. Holding it felt like regaining a lost piece of myself, a reminder of why I became a nurse in the first place. The judge had urged reforms in interviewing minors. That echoed through me. I decided to turn my nightmare into purpose, raising awareness and supporting others. Leading workshops for healthcare staff on child memory suggestibility, how to phrase questions without planning memories. Support groups for people wrongly accused, inspired by practices mentioned in PTSD and false memory research advocacy projects with local justice groups, encouraging policy changes in police interviews. Scientific insights show that memory is reconstructive and can be distorted by suggestion, especially in high-stress contexts or when PTSD is involved. My goal wasn't to dismantle healing, but to promote evidence-aware compassion. Recovery wasn't linear. I still wrestled with anxiety, nightmares, hypervigilance. But I found help in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, learning to catch and reframe negative self-talk. Peer support groups, connecting with others who've experienced false accusations, self-care habits, morning runs, cooking again, slow conversations with trusted friends. Resources like After Innocence and Road to Reentry offer comprehensive post-conviction support, therapy, case management, financial advice, and community reentry. Mental health services must be part of reintegration. They are life-saving. I learned that exonerees often face guilt, stigma, unemployment, PTSD responses, yet many states offer little support. Many demand reforms, mandatory mental health care, financial compensation, structured reentry services. Organizations like the Innocence Project and Together-based mental health advocacy groups actively push such systemic changes. No, I didn't reunite with Amanda or Chloe, but that's okay. I found solace in returning to nursing, teaching and mentoring colleagues. Volunteering at memory awareness events. Writing, continuing to share my story online and in public forums, so others feel seen and supported. Annual ritual, lighting a candle every sentencing anniversary, a reminder of survival and growth. Memories require evidence, not emotion alone. Science must guide compassion, especially when children speak. Justice demands both empathy and critical thinking. Wrongful accusations can break lives, but recovery is possible with support, awareness, and care. If you or someone you know faces a similar ordeal, seek legal counsel experienced in false accusation cases. Prioritize mental health support, therapy, peer groups, case management. Educate yourself on memory science, and how to ask questions without contamination. Connect with advocacy organizations for resources and systemic support. I'm 43, a nurse, a survivor of accusation, and a man continually rebuilding. My scars remain, but so does my hope. My voice matters now, to remind systems, evidence and empathy must walk hand in hand. If you're reading this, let it be a beacon. No system is perfect, but together, we can make justice better, kinder, and more accountable. Second chances aren't given, they're forged from truth.